everybody, my name is Mars, you can call me MG if you'd like, and today we have a very special video. This is my top 24 books that I read in 2024. I am so excited to talk to you guys about these books, but first I have a few disclaimers. First, as always, this is not including rereads. This is only a list of books that I read for the first time this year. If I included rereads, we know that the Bone Houses would win every single year. Second disclaimer is that I did not include any manga on this list, which I did do in previous years. This year, I just didn't read a ton of manga, and while I did enjoy what I liked, I figured this list would just be regular books. And the third disclaimer is that I did give every book a position in this list of 24, but it's pretty loosey-goosey, you know? The top 10, I would say, are a very definitive top 10. But even within there could be a little bit of shuffling around and changing positions. And then 11 through 24 are definitely, on this list for a reason, but they can, shift around depending on my mood on the day. This is just the list of it right now. In the future, if I revisit this list, I might be like, actually thinking back on it, I would rank this book higher than this book, but it's fine. We're just gonna go with the order that we have here. And without further ado, let's get talking about books. So in spot number 24, I actually have a bit of a surprise, and that is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I read this because I had a reading prompt to fulfill where I needed to read a book with an animal POV, and I have already read Watership Down. I read that earlier this year, had a weird time with it. I have already read Warrior Cats. I DNF'd that a couple years back. So I'm like, you know what? Animal Farm is a very famous book with an animal POV. Let's give it a shot. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was so well written and the story was so good, so poignant. Very much understandable why this is taught in schools for the past several decades. It's so good. I'm kind of sad that I didn't read it in school, but maybe not, because if I read it in school, maybe I would have liked it less. Who knows? Regardless, I had a great time reading this book, and I'm very happy about that, because I also have read 1984 in the past and was not a big fan of it, so I was a little bit nervous because of my previous history with George Orwell, but yeah, Animal Farm, great book. In spot 23, we have An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, and I have this beautiful new edition. This is the new paperback cover. You can see the little previews of the other covers that are just as gorgeous. I read this in September. I bought it in August on a whim. Well, my boyfriend bought it for me on a whim because we were killing time in a bookstore before an event, and I saw this and I'm like, this is so beautiful. Do you want to buy it for me? And he's like, yeah, we'll go take it up to the cashier. And I had a really good time with this. There are a few things where I was like, ooh, I would have done that differently, but not very many. And I'm still so excited for the rest of the series. I actually asked my mom to get me the other 3 books for Christmas. She asked for a long list of books, and I put all 3 of the rest of the series on there. And I said, make sure you get the matching covers if you go for these books, because I want the whole set to look nice on my shelf. And the spine has a continuous image when you put them all next to each other, so it's a great time. I really enjoyed this. I think maybe if it wasn't YA, I would have liked it a little bit more, but that's neither here nor there. It's still a fantastic book, and I'm so excited to read the rest of the series. I just looked over at my stack, and there's actually a lot of YA on this list, so maybe I enjoyed that age category more than I thought I did, because in the 22 spot we have The Novice by Taran Matharu, which is also YA fantasy. I really had a great time with this. I picked this up at a thrift store because I know Jess from the Hex Library enjoyed this, and you'll hear me say that again later on in this list, but I trust Jess explicitly with her reading taste. If she likes a book, 9 times out of 10 I'm gonna like that book. So I picked this up not really knowing anything about it, and this is gonna sound so weird, but I think the vibes of this book are Lord of the Rings meets Pokemon. It has all these different fantasy races like orcs and dwarves and elves, and I really missed that. I feel like you don't see that anymore. If you do see fantasy races, it's like vampires and fae, which not to knock those are great fantasy races too, but I missed your classic fantasy races, and this really delivered on that end. There's also demons and demon summoning, and they have like different power levels and things, and that's the part that kind of reminded me of Pokemon. Our main character is such a great character. I loved hearing his story, and as with An Ember in the Ashes, I cannot wait to continue on with this series. This one's only a trilogy, so it has slightly fewer books, and I am hoping to make it a priority to get to them in 2025 because I really enjoyed this. Coming in at number 21, we have Where Darkness Blooms by Andrea Hanna, and I didn't know anything about this book going into it. I had never heard of it before. I just found it on Everand, and I'm like, ooh, that's a really interesting cover. And then I read the blurb, and I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued. This is a horror book, and it deals with misogyny and a lot of like mistreatment of women in society, and it was so well done. As with several other books on this list, there are like a few teeny tiny details where I was like, not so sure I like that exact like execution of it, but overall this was a fantastic book, and I'm actually using it as a comp title for the current writing project that I'm working on, so that's always a bonus. In the 20th spot, we have A Crane Among Wolves by June Her, and this was actually on my 24 in 2024 list because I had a little section of new releases, so this just came out this year, and this is a historical book inspired by Korean history, and it's got a murder mystery element to it, it's got a romance, it's got a whole lot of crazy stuff, and it all comes together so well, and it's so fun. I binged this. I had a wonderful time reading it, and I definitely want to check out more works from this author. Number 19 is Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley, which is really funny because I was going to read this as an ebook, and I had the ebook all lined up and everything, and then right before I started reading it, like literally days before, I did a little loop around my neighborhood little free libraries, and I found this copy of it. So now I own a physical copy, and I'm glad that I do because I loved this book. It was so good. It's got a whole interesting magic system. It's sapphic. It deals with sibling relationships, which we know I love sibling relationships. So I had a great time with this, and will be reading more from this author as well. For book 18, we have Winter by Marissa Meyer. This is the fourth book in the Lunar Chronicles series. It concludes the main series. There are like spin-offs and prequels and all that jazz, but this ends the like main core group of books. And oh my god, was I blown away. I was nervous going into this because this is a very heavy book and it's like deceptively sized. This is 800 pages long. Like these pages are Bible thin. So I was like, that's a lot of story. I'm terrified that's gonna get like bogged down in all the details and it's gonna like drag on, but it really didn't. I felt like this was such a satisfying conclusion to the series, and Winter, and I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's spelled Jacin, and in my head I was saying Jacine. Apparently in the audiobook it's just Jason. I don't know which is correct, but that is my favorite couple in the series because all four books follow a different princess and their love interests because these are fairy tale retellings. But yeah, I loved this book and it really cemented this series as a favorite series for me, so it had to be on this list. Speaking of series, in 17 we have Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon, which is the second book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, and this one really surprised me. So I read the first Ice Planet Barbarians book in February of this year and was shocked by how much of a good time I had with it. I'm not a super big romance reader, but I think this year has really shown me that I do love romance books. I just like when they have some extra element to it, like big blue aliens, I guess. And I've actually read the first four books in the series this year, and the second one is definitely my favorite of the bunch so far. I just really love the couple that we follow in this one. I think it's so fun, and the series is just a silly, goofy time, so I'm very excited to read the rest of this long, long series. In a complete tonal shift, the 16th book on this list is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, another book that I got out of a little free library, which is an insane find. This book is so expensive, and the fact that I got it for free is just chef's kiss. I vlogged my experience of this, and I'm so glad that I did because I'm gonna go back and watch it at some point in the future just to see my reactions, because this is such a trip. If you don't know what this is, basically it's like a story within a story within a story, and the pages, I'm trying to find a good one to show you, are like all weird, and they like reflect, like this one, there's just two words down here and then like a sentence here. They reflect what's happening in the story. Ooh, that's a good one to show you if I can get to it. Like here they're in the corners. Like it's just absolutely bizarre what happens in this, and I enjoyed every second of it. It was phenomenal. I envy Mark Z. Danielewski for his ability to come up with something like this, because I know I could never. Number 15 is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, and I read this so out of season. This is an extremely wintry book, and I read it right smack dab in the middle of summer, and I still had a great time with it. It was so fun. I love the dynamic between Emily and her love interest, whose name I am blanking on right now because I'm thinking about too many books at one time. Wendell? I think it's Wendell. It's so fun. I love the fairy aspect to it because they're not like the modern sense of fae, which again, not to knock the modern sense of fae. I enjoy those stories too sometimes, but it's very classically folklore fairy, and I love that sort of thing. This was so fantastic, and there are two more books in this series. One is already out, and the next one I think comes out this upcoming February. Is that true? That's potentially true. Anyway, as with every other series on this list, I cannot wait to continue. Okay, I lied a little bit. There's one series that I would not say I can't wait to continue, and that's because I've already continued it. So in the 14th spot, we have Soulless by Gail Carriger. Still don't know how to pronounce that, but this is another book that I bought because I know Jess really loved it, and I also loved this. It was so good, and I binged the whole series. There are 5 books. Maybe a bit too long of a series to binge, but what's done is done. This is historical fantasy with vampires and werewolves and ghosts, and our main character can like negate those supernatural abilities, which is a really fun power. This was so good. The main character is hilarious. I loved Alexia, and I loved her banter with Lord Macan, who is her love interest. He's this brooding Scottish alpha werewolf. So funny. There is a sequel series that follows, spoiler alert, their child, and there's also a like spin-off following a different character. So I have plenty more books to read in this world, but I am glad that I read this whole series like together, and it's like not lingering like some of the other series. But yeah, this was a super fun time. Number 13 is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is a YA mystery thriller, and I read it physically while also listening to the audiobook because this has a podcast element to it, so you can see written out in like a transcript. So some of the chapters are written like that, some of the chapters are written as like a normal novel, and the normal sections follow Sadie as she's trying to find the murderer of her younger sister, and then the podcast element takes place I think like 6 or so months later, and they're following like the trail of breadcrumbs that Sadie left. And it's so beautifully put together. The ending had me devastated. It was a wild ride, and I loved every second of it, so I will be reading more from Courtney Summers. In the 12th spot, we have The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew, and this was recommended to me by my dear friend Violet, and I'm so glad she recommended it to me because I had never heard of it, but I loved this book. It has an academic setting, a weird sci-fi twist to the academic setting. It has disability representation, which is something I always value in books. The main character is deaf and in its own voices because the author is also deaf and she drew on her own experiences, and this was just so fun and weird, and also kind of broke my heart a little bit. I will definitely be rereading this book in the future because there were a lot of things that I don't think I picked up on in my first read that I will pick up on in future reads, so I'm looking forward to that. Then in the 11th spot, we have a recommendation from my friend Madison, and that was A Marvelous Light by Freya Marski. This is another historical fantasy book. I really got into historical fantasy this year. It was truly a standout genre for me. but this is also queer. It follows a male-male couple. The sequel follows two women who fall in love, and then I think the third book is male-male again. And I'm very much looking forward to them, as I have said a million times about a million different series this year. It's fine. We're gonna do damage control next year and kind of wrap up some of these series that I started this year because there have been so many. But yes, A Marvelous Light was so good, and I loved the characters. The characters were truly the best part of this, which is saying something because the magic was also fantastic, and like the mystery element was so good. I'm speaking so fast, my mouth can't keep up. But I truly adored the character work in this book, and I'm looking forward to the characters that we follow in the sequels. For number 10, we are going back to a book with an academic-ish setting, because that's also something that I really love in books, and we are going to talk about The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I'll show you the spine so you can see that's what this is. I took the dust jacket off because I thrifted this. Well, I bought it at a library book sale, and the dust jacket was a little bit grimy. I don't know, it didn't like have any stains or anything on it. It just felt a little bit off to me, and plus this hardcover is stunning, so I just have the dust jacket in my closet. But yeah, The Starless Sea was so good, so fantastical. It's another queer book. I love queer books, guys. Recommend me all of your favorite queer books, disability rep books, historical fantasy, academic settings, all that jazz. If you have books that fit those requirements, let me know, because I'm always on the lookout for more. You can tell that those are my favorite kinds of books. But yeah, this is like a little bit absurdist and does go a little bit beyond what I expected from it, and I'm not mad about it. It was so fun. I feel like I'm running out of adjectives to use because I've talked about so many books and they're all books that I love, but it's fine. We persevere. I had a great time with this, and Erin Morgenstern has one other book out, as far as I'm aware. I think she's only got the two, but The Night Circus, which is another book that I've heard so much about. It's like a booktube darling, so I'm a little bit nervous going into that. Because I had a great time with this, I kind of am nervous that I'm not going to like the other one as much, but we'll see. It is a moderate priority to get to that in the future. We'll see when that actually happens, though. For number 9, we have Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, and I wish I had this one physically. I own her two other full-length novels physically, and you bet I'm going to be getting a physical copy of this one because it was so good, you guys. It also has a kind of academic setting. Our main character, Elizabeth, grew up in a library, and we have that queer rep because the love interest is bisexual, and let me tell you, he is a disaster in the best way. He's so funny, and like the two of them together, it's just great. And Silas, oh, Silas is also a fantastic character. There is a sequel novella called Mysteries of Thorn Manor that I have since read in the time after reading Sorcery of Thorns, and it's just as good, if not better. I'm hesitant to say that though, because like it's only as good as it is because Sorcery of Thorns was so good. You know, like it definitely is dependent on that, but it's fine. Also, Margaret Rogerson is currently, at the time of me filming this, releasing a like short story that follows Silas, and it's 5 chapters, and she's releasing 1 chapter a day up till Christmas. And I'm waiting until Christmas Day to binge the whole thing because I'm impatient, but like that's so fun. I love that she's doing that, and I can't wait to read it. In the 8th spot, we have We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and this was a great book. I loved the characters in this. I feel like I've been saying that a lot, but like I am slightly more character driven than plot driven when it comes to books. So the characters really have to do it for me to love a book. And this is definitely a character book. I loved the movie for this, so I kind of knew the vibes going into it, but the book just blows the movie out of the water. It's so good. This is only my second time reading Shirley Jackson. I, like many other children in the American school system, read The Lottery, which is a really messed up short story. Look it up if you haven't read that one because it's wild, but like there's a reason why Shirley Jackson is hailed as one of the masters of horror. Like she does it so well. In spot number 7, we have Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. who another master of her craft. Octavia E. Butler is definitely one of the giants in the science fiction world, and you can really tell why. This was so good. It's post-apocalyptic, it's got religious vibes to it, buzzwords for me. It was fantastic. I read this and its sequel in a vlog and had an interesting time because I might have accidentally picked the most timely time to read these books. It was insane. I'm gonna leave a bunch of links to vlogs down in the description for you to check out if you want to see me give like a play-by-play of me reading some of these books. So yeah, it was certainly a time, and I will be revisiting this book in the future because it was just amazing. Book number 6 is one that is near and dear to my heart for a very special reason. It is A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kinney, a dear friend of mine. This is her debut novel that came out. This is the Unplugged Book Box edition, and it's the Under the Dust Jacket because I just think it's absolutely stunning. But like the regular dust jacket is, or the special edition just dust jacket is also stunning, and the regular cover is great. Like, imagine publishing your debut novel and it has 3 great covers. Like, I love that for her. But it's also got like sprayed edges and art on the end pages. It's got a ribbon bookmark. So fun. And the story is great. If you love like witchy romantasy books, if you love Halloween, check this out. It's so good. Hades and Persephone vibes. I could not sing the praises of this book highly enough, and I'm so glad that I got to support Wallace on her book tour that she did. I went up to Boston to go to her like book tour stop and got a signed copy, which I mean technically this one's also signed, but that's because it's like a special edition book box book. But like I have the regular copy too that's signed, so they will be treasured always, and I'm so happy to have these. All right, friends, we have made it to the top 5, and in the number 5 spot, we have The Tatami Galaxy by Tomihiko Morimi. This is actually my boyfriend's book, so he watched the anime and really liked it, and so he bought the novel that it's based on, and I don't know if he actually finished it. I think he only read like half of it, but he's seen the anime, so he gets the vibes. And then I did a vlog where I read my boyfriend's books for a week, and this just blew me out of the water. It's so good. It follows an unnamed narrator who's a college student, and he's kind of just like, where did it all go wrong? And we follow different timelines of like if he made a different decision, where would he have ended up? And then they all like come together in the end. And it's fantastic. I definitely want to read the rest of this author's books. He's got a couple that are like award winners, and it's so good. I love Japanese literature. I feel like it's just a different brand, maybe is the word. I don't think so, but like I've read so much Japanese literature that just it has a different vibe to Western literature, and I love it so much. So this was definitely well worth the number 5 spot on this list. In 4th place, we have Like a River Glorious by Ray Carson, which is the second book in the Gold Seer trilogy. So I read the first book in 2023, and then I actually finished out the series here. And the third book is still fantastic. I gave all 3 of these books a 10 out of 10, which is how you know they're amazing. But I like the second one a teensy tiny bit more, so that's why it's on this list instead of the third book. But it's amazing. This is another historical fantasy, and it follows Leah Westfall, who is a 16-year-old girl from Georgia, 16, 17, something along those lines, and she can sense gold in the ground, which is good but also bad because it is currently the midst of the American gold rush. So some things happen. She's forced to flee her hometown and travel across the country to get to California, where the bulk of the gold rush is happening in America. And this second book is her already in California trying to establish a little town with her friends and allies, and it's so good, you guys. Like, I could not sing this book's praises enough. I feel like I've used that phrase already in this video. I'm really repeating myself. I'm very glad that we only have 3 more books to talk about. So, the third favorite book that I've read this year is The Diviners by Libba Bray, which is the first book in the Diviners series. It's a quartet, so I have 3 more to go, and I'm so excited to read them. This is Another historical fantasy. This takes place in 1920s New York. It's 1926 specifically, and our main character, well, we have a lot of main characters, but like the main character is Evie, and she can read objects and like get a sense of their owner's past. And she gets in trouble in her hometown for doing this, so she goes to New York for a little while to let the town kind of forget what happened. And she lives with her uncle, who is like an occult, paranormal, not investigator, but like he has a museum and I think he teaches classes, maybe? I don't know. But there's like this series of weird murders going on that have to do, like, they're tied to the Book of Revelation, which, like, we know I love religious vibes in books. And we meet other characters who are diviners who have these powers. They have like different kinds of powers, but it's fantastic, you guys. Like, I could not like push you enough to read this book if you are into like historical books with paranormal vibes to it. Like, it's amazing. And Melissa Bray has the potential to be a new favorite author for me. I have to read a couple more of her books before I really decide that, but this is the second one that I read from her, and I loved both of them, although one of them I haven't read in a very long time, so I would have to reread it to see if it's still something I love. But yeah, Libba Bray is definitely an author I have my eye on because I think she could be a favorite. In the number 2 spot, we have a book that was almost definitely going to be my number 1 book. Like, as soon as I read it, I'm like, yep, that's the one. Until very, very recently, like in the past couple of weeks, I read a book that knocked it off the number 1 spot. So, number 2, we have The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Wax and Wane series, which is the second era of Mistborn. So there's the original Mistborn trilogy, and then I think like 300 years later, yeah, 300 years have passed and society has gone on, and we now have this series, and it's got Wild West vibes, a little bit of steampunk vibes, but it also has the same magic system that we've established in Mistborn, and like they just blend together so well. And again, the character work in this is amazing. It's so good, and Brandon Sanderson's writing style is just something that gels with me so well. Like, from the first page, I was absolutely hooked. So I need to continue on with this. I know that at the end of, I think, book 3 or book 4, because there's 4 books in the series, and somewhere late in the series, there's a death that is extremely devastating, but I don't know who it is, and I'm so scared to get there. But like, man, Brandon Sanderson, guys, I want to read a lot more from him because as of right now, I've only read the Mistborn trilogy and this book, but like there's the rest of the series. There's the Stormlight Archive series that recently got the 5th book. He's got a bunch of standalones. I'm so excited to read more because his books just really do it for me, so it's no surprise that this was almost my number 1 book. But the book that did end up number 1 is, drumroll, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, which was such a shock to me. I did a vlog where I taste tested Rebecca Ross's books. I read the first book in each of her duologies that she has, and the first one was okay. It was kind of bland. The second one I really enjoyed. The third one, Divine Rivals, obviously, because it's my number 1 book of the year, I adored every aspect of this. It is historical fantasy, but not like the way the other books have been historical fantasy. It's historical in the same way The Alloy of Law was, where it draws inspiration from the past of the real world, but it takes place in a different world. And basically, it's like World War II vibes, but the war is between these 2 gods that have woken up, and our main character, Iris, her brother, is fighting in this war, and her mother is having all of these issues, so she is like writing letters to her brother, and they like disappear because she's using a magical typewriter. But then one day she finally gets a letter back, and it turns out it has not been her brother receiving these letters. So it's just a fantastic book, and the ending absolutely destroyed me. I am going to read the sequel as soon as humanly possible. I'm actually going to do like a sequel vlog where I finish out all 3 of those duologies that I started, so look forward to that. But yeah, Divine Rivals, truly deserved the spot for number one book of the year because it was just amazing. And I've decided that my reading journal next year, each month, my like cover page where I put my TBR and stats and everything, is going to be themed after the favorite book of the month before. So my January theme is going to be after Divine Rivals, and that's just so exciting to me. I'm very much looking forward to that. So there you have my top 24 books that I read in 2024. I feel like I've been filming for 6 years and just repeating myself over and over again about how much I love these books, but you know what? It's fine. Let me know in the comments what the best books you read this year were, and maybe we've got some overlap. Maybe you've read some other books that I need to check out. We'll just have to wait and see. But we've now come to the end of this video. If you've enjoyed it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everyone.